Hello, today we're going to be working on factoring ax squared plus bx plus c, a trinomial where a is not equal to 1. For example, in the given 6x squared plus 11x plus 4, our leading coefficient is 6. So let's see how we should be able to factor the following. Alright, using our a, c, and b method, let's go ahead and start. Your a is a 6 and your b is a 4, which produces a 24. If that's the case, think of factors of 24. This time, using the b value of 11. What are factors of 24 that could add to 11? And you're right, that's an 8 and a 3. So what is the significance of having a leading coefficient which is not 1? Here's how it comes into play. Your job is to divide each of the factors you found by that leading coefficient. Once you do, 8 divided by 6 can be simplified into 4 over 3. On the other hand, 3 over 6 is the same as 1/2. What happens is the denominator you produced will become the coefficient in your binomial. So for 4/3, it will turn into 3x plus 4. Why plus 4? Because the sign of 4/3 is positive. Similarly, in 1/2, the denominator 2 will go in front of the x as a coefficient, changing this to 2x plus 1. So in order to check if you correctly factored, you can go ahead and multiply them back together. 3x times 2x will give you a 6x squared. The outer terms will give you a 3x. The inner terms will give you an 8x. And the last terms will give you a 4. Now our first and last terms check. Take a look at the middle terms. This sums up to 11x. And that's what you wanted. Therefore, here are your factors. Our next example, 3x squared minus 2x minus 8, whose leading coefficient is 3. Let's go ahead and factor this out. You have a 3 multiplied by a negative 8, giving you a negative 24. Meanwhile, your b has a value of negative 2. So factors of negative 24 that add to negative 2 are correct, negative 6 and a positive 4. Now, do we immediately plug these into our binomial as factors? No, we don't. We must remember to divide these two numbers by the leading coefficient. In this case, it's a 3. You can simplify negative 6/3 further as negative 2 and leave 4/3 as it is. If that's the case, one of your factors will become an x minus 2, while the other one is a 3x plus 4. Let's go ahead and check and make sure that we factored correctly. The first terms multiply to 3x squared, the outer terms multiply to 4x, the inner terms negative 6x, and the last terms to negative 8. Once again, our first and last terms are correct. Let's make sure our middle terms will add up to negative 2x. In this case, yes it does. That's how you know you factored correctly. Our next example is 9x squared minus 15x plus 4. In this case, a times c is a 36 and b is a negative 15. Likewise, we find our factors for 36 summing up to negative 15. And yes, you provide me a negative 12 and a negative 3. Once again, dividing these by the leading coefficient. Negative 12/9 turns into negative 4/3. That's a 3. And negative 3/9 into a negative 1/3. This time, we can go ahead and proceed to write these out as your binomial factors with a 3x minus 4 and a 3x minus 1. Alright, you can always go ahead and pause the video to check if you've done this correctly. Here's another example. I'll go ahead and write down a and c with a negative 12, a b of a value of 11. Factors of negative 12 that add to 11 must be a 12 and a negative 1. Once again, dividing by the leading coefficient, 12 over 3 simplifies into 4. Thus, our factors become x minus 4. I'm sorry, that's a plus 4. Erase. Thus, we are now able to write our binomials as x plus 4 and a 3x minus 1. Alright, next example. Go ahead and take a minute to pause the video so you can try the following problems out. When you're ready, you can play the video once more and check your answers. Now you're ready to factor out a negative value. Sometimes our polynomials have a negative value that you need to factor out, such as a -1. Be sure to apply the sign change to all of the terms. Let's take a look at an example. For example, the given has a negative leading coefficient. As per recommended in our previous slide, we must factor out -1. Let's go ahead and do that. If I do that, I must apply the same idea to every single term. 2x squared turns positive, -5x turns to positive 5x, and so does -3. Now we are able to factor the trinomial the way we have been. AC becomes A6, and B becomes A5. Factors of 6 that add up to 5 are 3 and 2. Remembering once again that our leading coefficient is not 1, so we must divide by 2. Simplifying 2 over 2, now we can go ahead and rewrite our factors. Start with a negative that you factored out, or a -1. Continue on. You will have a 2x plus 3 and an x plus 1. And those are the factors of your polynomial. Moving on, another example with a negative. Once again, factor out the -1 value. You don't really need to write the 1, but if you prefer to do so, feel free. Changing our signs for every single term, here we go. So, considering that our leading coefficient is 6, let's go ahead and find the factors. A times C will produce a 72, and B is a 17. So factors of 72 that add to 17 are 8 and 9. Remembering to divide these by 6, 8 over 6 turns into 4 over 3, and 9 over 6 turns into 3 over 2. Let's go ahead and list down our factors. Start with the -1 that you factored out, changing 4/3 to 3x plus 4, and changing 3/2 to 2x plus 3. Now try the last one out. When you're ready, play the video so you can check your answers.